So I was a little late getting this review out, partly because I was working on this cake for a friend of mine. Hashtag baking problems? What are you gonna do?
From the old movies of 30 years ago and beyond,
to the world of the new films of the last 30 years.
To the movies that are now playing, this is Old, New, and Now Playing. And now, here's your host, Will Robinson Smith.
Hello and welcome to Old, New, and Now Playing, your time machine through the world of movies. If you're just joining me for the first time, thanks so much for looking in, and if you're returning, welcome on back. Now, it's been discussed, it's been debated. Even Slimer had something to say about it, even though pretty much he can't talk and just speaks in gibberish. But I'm of course talking about the new reboot of Ghostbusters. But before we launch into the full review of that, I want to take a moment to discuss how we got to the point of a reboot instead of getting an actual Ghostbusters 3. So back in 1989, Ghostbusters 2 graced the big screen to, well, not lots of applause. The movie made less than half of what the original production brought in domestically. Over the next decade, there were lots of rumors and speculation about whether or not a third film would be coming. Back in February of 1999, Harold Ramis, who co-wrote and starred in the first two movies, spoke with Entertainment Weekly about the project, saying, quote, "The dream plan is that Dan Aykroyd, and I would produce it. I would direct it, and we would recruit some newer, younger, popular Ghostbusters to star." Hope for a new sequel seemed to pop up every now and again, like in 2008, when Ramis told the Chicago Tribune that a script was in the works and Judd Apatow would be producing. In 2011, Bill Murray said on The Howard Stern Show that he hadn't read a script, but is aware that one exists. Then in September 2012, director Ivan Reitman told Collider that perhaps there should be a Ghostbusters remake instead of a sequel. Things shifted when Harold Ramis died in February of 2014 at age 69. It was shortly thereafter that Reitman stepped down as the presumptive director, saying to Deadline, "With Harold no longer with us, I couldn't see it." Later that year, Bridesmaids director Paul Feig tweeted that he would be taking the reins of the Ghostbusters world, saying that the new movie would be a reboot starring a team of women. Which of course leads us to the now in which we get this reboot that's been more than 25 years in the making. So let's dive in. This is your feature presentation. So while this movie is not a blow-for-blow remake of the first Ghostbusters, it has more in common with the 1984 film than the 1989 sequel. Kristen Wiig plays Erin, a tenure-tracking professor at Columbia University who's skating on thin ice after her childhood friend Abby publishes a book they wrote detailing the theoretical science of the paranormal. When Erin, Abby, and Abby's partner Holtzman record themselves seeing a ghost, Erin ultimately gets fired and the trio go into business together. While they're hunting for more ghosts, they come across subway worker Patty, played by Leslie Jones. Her knowledge of the city convinces the other women to let her join the team and try and stop what seems to be an increasing amount of ghost sightings. You don't have to see the original Ghostbusters before seeing this movie, but I feel like you should because there are a lot of references and nods to that movie that you'll completely miss if you don't see it. I mean, of course, some are really obvious, like the cameos by the original cast, but things that are more subtle you'll probably miss if you haven't seen that first movie. As far as the characters, though, in the reboot, I thought some worked better than others. Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig I thought worked really well together. Obviously, they both shared the screen in Bridesmaids under Paul Feig's direction, so they had a good sense of each other going into this movie. And watching their initially strained friendship was definitely one of the better parts of this film. Surprisingly, though, Chris Hemsworth may have been my favorite character in this film. He plays the wonderfully dumb Kevin, a guy just looking for a desk job, and is the embodiment of someone who could have only gotten as far as he did in life because he's built like a Norse god. Of course, we've seen Hemsworth pull off charming humor in the Thor and Avengers movies.
This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
Sorry, Izzy, little accident. What was that?
It was delicious. I want another.
Well, you could have just said so.
I just did.
No, I mean, ask nicely.
I meant no disrespect.
All right, well, no more smashing. Deal?
You have my word.
But this is his biggest foray into comedy, and boy did he land. There's an ease that comes with his comedic timing, and he plays nicely off of Kristen Wiig and the others too. The other half of the Ghostbusting team, Leslie Jones and Kate McKinnon, were a bit hit and miss for me. I thought that about 85% of the time, Jones added some nice energy to the mix. She had her own way of going about things that was distinctly different from the rest of the cast. That said, there were some times when she went a bit overboard for me, and I wish she had dialed it back just a bit. For example, there's this scene which we see in a lot of the marketing.
Get out of my friend, Ghost! Ow, that's gonna leave a mark The power of pain compels you!
And maybe it's because we've been inundated with that scene so many times in the marketing, but I really didn't find it funny when it actually happened, and there were a few other moments that were like that throughout the movie. And then there's Holtzman. In a featurette, McKinnon mentions that this character is pretty close to her own personality, but as I was watching it, she just felt kind of out of place for a lot of the movie. It felt like the movie was going along and the plot was moving forward, but then wait, Kate McKinnon has an SNL sketch to do? And then the movie would get back to moving forward, but then wait, I've got a hat now. Is it the hat you don't like? Do you like the hat? But really, that was on director Paul Feig to make catches like that. Speaking of whom, it seemed like there were sequences that felt a bit out of place and came across as awkwardly forced humor. Like the concert scene featured in most of the trailers. There were a number of joke attempts thrown at the audience, most of which just fell flat, like Patty trying to crowd surf.
Do this! Okay, I don't know if it was a race thing or a lady thing, but I'm mad as hell.
As for the story, like I said, it does take a number of cues from the original movie, but I give it props for taking some different turns to give this film its own path. There was one thing that really did bother me though the more I sat and thought about it, and technically this would be considered a minor spoiler. Minor spoilers! So if you don't want to know anything about this part of the movie, just skip to this time code right here. I'll wait. 3, 2, 1! Ready? So the first time they use their proton packs to catch a ghost, they put it in a trap. Just like the first movie, not surprising. But later in the movie, when you see them fighting the waves of ghosts near Times Square, as seen in the trailers, they seem to be able to destroy the ghosts with the proton packs and other ghost-busting gadgets. Okay, fine, you can chalk that up to them getting better ghost-busting equipment that actually lets them destroy ghosts. But earlier in the movie, they talk about the fact that they need to create some kind of containment chamber for the ghosts, and then later in the movie, you see them actually creating that chamber and working on making that a thing. So, are they able to destroy ghosts now, or do they need to catch and contain them like so many Pokemon? I don't know. The movie just doesn't explain that, and I guess we'll have to wait until the sequel that I assume is coming out to find out the answers to that. And based on how this movie ended, it's definitely primed for a sequel and possibly looking to be the start of a franchise. As for the special effects, this was definitely the best the ghosts have ever looked in the movies. There are also some nice nods to the original movie and the big ghost battle at the end, so be on the lookout for those. As far as the humor goes, and obviously comedy is super subjective, I felt like most of the jokes weren't laugh out loud funny, but rather just amusing, and the film works better as an action sci-fi film with tinges of comedy and horror mixed in, rather than just feeling like a full-on comedy sci-fi film. Overall though, I feel like the naysayers who dumped on this movie before seeing it just need to be quiet or see the movie and judge for themselves. There's a bunch of fun things in here, and seeing the cameos was great, albeit some did feel a little forced. Dan Aykroyd. I give Ghostbusters a 7 out of 10. Was it as good as the original? No, I don't think that was possible, but they took enough elements to make a good overall story, and I do hope that they make a sequel. I would recommend seeing it in 3D. Now, of course, 3D isn't always necessary for most films, but in this one, there are a lot of times when the ghosts fly beyond the constraints of the film, as well as other movie elements, and go into the black bars above and below, and it's a little distracting at first, I'll admit, but while it isn't for everybody, I thought it did enhance the movie, and by the end of it, I thought it was actually a pretty cool effect. Also, there is a mid-credits scene to stick around for, as well as an end-credits scene once all is said and done. And if you like the original movie, there's a big Easter egg in that end credits scene, so be sure to stick around. So those are my thoughts on the Ghostbusters remake. When you get a chance to see it, I want to hear all about what you thought of the movie, and who's your favorite Ghostbuster from any of the movies. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. This week is going to be fun. The new Star Trek movie comes out, and this year is also the 50th anniversary of the franchise, so we're doing an all-Trek week. We'll be talking about the beloved films The Wrath of Khan and First Contact leading up to Star Trek Beyond on Friday. And since there's so much lore beyond the films that should enter the conversation, my good friend and Star Trek enthusiast Jamie Ward will be joining me on the show, which should be a lot of fun. That will do it for this episode of Old, New, and Now Playing. If you like this review, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, that would be great. And if you want to stay up to date with everything we have going on here, just click that subscribe button down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.